Evening all, here we go again. So basically just to recap where we are in this, all hell broke loose. The Sophra, which is the other ship, is in equal little bits, as you can see right outside the window there. And naturally that, when you have a kind of reactor implosion, as I think happened here, then the Suloco was right next to it. It's pretty much a given that the Suloco is going to blow up as well. So what begins here, I think, is probably one of the finer levels of this game. In terms of the game itself, I'd say it's getting a lot better, actually. I'm certainly enjoying it. I know it sounds crazy, but it could be that the first, I think, certainly the mechanics of the shooting are not great, but I think maybe what they've tried to do is maybe mirror some of the, the Call of Duty style play. And that's certainly the way it feels as well. I mean, I almost give it that Call of Duty. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is I think there's been this real kind of focus that because of that maybe very light gunplay approach, plus maybe some initial pretty bad matches. I mean, the fact that you board the Suloco, then you're pretty much immediately into a bunch of aliens who just seem to throw themselves at you. I would almost say maybe we're the reason why this got poorly scored in the reviews, because as I've played this further, I've actually become quite enamoured with it. And let me explain. I think certainly with a lot of the games that you play, sometimes the story has to kind of be, they have to pay heed to the story. And I think this is just, an example of that, where the first few levels of this game were just abysmal. And it almost seemed like comic book style action, whereas once I got to this point, fighting my way to the bridge and then all of a sudden the Sophra exploding, this became quite all of a sudden I'm like, oh, hello, what's going on here? This seemed to have a bit more of a substance to it. So certainly this level as well, I mean, because I play a lot of spaceship games as well, one of the key things that I'm really kind of missing in that whole genre is the ability to have spaceship invasions. Do you know what I mean? Big kind of Battlefleet Gothic. If you don't know what Battlefleet Gothic is, Google it, because it's probably one of the finer things that the Games Workshop did way back when. It's really old, but and I really got into it because it was effectively ship versus ship tabletop gaming, if you like. So yeah, nerd alert, but it was really good fun. And what I would say is the way that the reason why it works so well is because you actually had a huge kind of couple of you had huge ships fighting each other and boarding each other, and you could have like teams of people fighting on board, basically doing incursions onto the enemy ships. And I always wondered why no games seem to have ever done that. There are a few games maybe where they've tried. You're probably going to tell me of a few that I don't know about, maybe Mass Effect. I never really played Mass Effect for many reasons, but I think that there was always this thing of two great big ships slugging it out against each other and basically boarding one another. And I always thought that was something that a game that I'm not aware of any game that's really done that very well. And this is why this level to me particularly was really good, because all of a sudden you had this really quite interesting scenario where, frankly, this is a ship that's going down. It's dying. Now the thing is, let's just think about that. This ship is supposed to be, maybe a couple of 100 meters long. Maybe, you could almost say maybe it's half a kilometer long, maybe even longer. But it's a big ship, and you think about the way that you would build this ship. So we get a bit engineering on your ass now, but the way you'd build this is you would basically have some form of superstructure that you would then basically weld together. So like a ship is built in sections, and then it's welded together, it's riveted together, or whatever you want to call it. And I think with these ships as well, there'd have to be, because they're so big and the stresses and strains of all the kind of inert gravities working on them, they would have to be phenomenally strong. So I love the fact that even when, this ship has been just, incredibly damaged, it's still held together. It's still, it's almost kind of like stressing and straining and groaning and moaning. And I love that. I just think this was a really cool thing. And again, there's been very few games, maybe only one or two that I can possibly remember, like Dead Space maybe, but there's only been a few where they've really dealt with what a ship would actually feel like inside and what it would actually do. So in a very long-winded way, it took me 5 minutes to say that. What I'm trying to say is I really like this level, and I think I'm really enjoying the game a lot more. In fact, a significant amount more, to the point where I would say a lot of the reviews are maybe a little bit unjust for it, because, and again, I would stress, I agreed wholeheartedly, this game was awful when I first started playing it, but as I've got through certain levels now, I'm actually thinking to myself, wow, this is actually really good. Why I couldn't maybe understand why so many people were having negative views on it. Unless, and you know, I hope this wasn't the case, unless a lot of people just played the first level and said, right, I've formed my opinion of it now, this is it. In which case, yeah, I could see why it scored very lowly. But as a game, I'm actually thinking I'm getting a huge amount from it. So, you know, I think personally, I think it's probably worth a look. But maybe not. I mean, I think, you know, you make your own call. I love the whole kind of story of Aliens, and for this, to me, this was like, you know, I wanted to find out what happened to the Suloco, or, you know, because they never really explained what happened to Suloco, and obviously this is a dramatization of it, but I'm enjoying it, I'm loving it, and you know, I think they've done a good job so far. So, just taking the deck, we're just taking the lift down to the engineering deck, and again, I'm doing my kind of, you know, herding kitten moment here, where I'm just running around trying to get all the power-ups, or the loots, rather. But what we were doing here was just really trying to get to the dropship to get the hell off the Suloco. But again, really loving the, you know, kind of the concept that the ship is falling apart. And to me, it just works really well. I think there's a really good, enjoyable thing. Now, as we come into this piece here, excuse me, what you then see is then all of a sudden there's a three-way battle going on now, and that to me was just amazing. I really love this whole concept. Right, the aliens are here all of a sudden, and now we're fighting three different, well, we're fighting two different enemies, but there's three parties we're fighting. In terms of the aliens themselves, I don't know if it's just me, but they seem to be getting better as well. Maybe it's just because I'm familiar with the AI now, I don't know, but I've noticed a few tactics that they do that do seem a bit kind of sort of startling. And that's pretty cool, obviously dropping down into this bit here on my own, that's a nice little touch. And I think maybe it's the set play that's coming into play here, because I just feel that there's a bit of nastiness. So there we go, like an alien just jumping out of under a grate. That's pretty cool, I like that. And to be honest, I think maybe it's just, again, the weapons weren't great, so the ability to shoot aliens felt very weak. It didn't feel particularly clean. It felt almost a little bit kind of unguided. But with the shotgun and with the certain guns that I'm getting, because obviously you pick up a lot of different guns in this, there aren't just the pulse rifle and so on, there's actually variants of that pulse rifle. There's also submachine pulse rifles and so on. So there are a lot of different weapons, and I probably would say that it's worth experimenting with them, because the stock gun isn't particularly great, but I'm loving the shotgun, and I'm loving you know, some of the more kind of, there's so-called legendary weapons, which are actually weapons from film. I won't spoil it, but you'll see some of that in later videos. But some of the guns you get there are really good because they're actually the original guns. So they've got, like, you know, a pulse rifle that has 95 shots in it, and it's actually properly done. So, you know, and I think the motion tracker as well is lovely. I really do like the fact that you can, it's almost like the tool that every first person shooter needs in a way, because I love the fact that you can just, you know, it actually has a purpose. You can see stuff with it. You can also see objectives and stuff like that, but its real purpose is there to, you know, basically make it a bit more eerie, really. And I think I liked it a lot. I thought it was always a great tool from the film. I always was, you know, gazed in wonder at how on earth you could do such a thing. But I think in the game they have made it very good. It's difficult. I mean, I feel almost a little bit kind of sorry for the game in a way, because I think it's had a very difficult, unjust review of it. It's no Half-Life 3, let's be honest. But I don't think it ever would have been, really. I mean, this, you know, even the games that they did like AVP2 and so on, we're always going to have a difficult, you know, kind of level of quality to live up to. And I think after having now played this much further than what you're seeing here, I would say they've done it. I mean, some of the story and some of the changes of the alien myth, if you like, I think have been done very well. So, you know, I mean, I know a lot of people, everybody in this kind of culture, I think everybody's naturally pessimistic. So, you know, if your mate tells you, oh, did you see that film? Oh, a load of shit, wasn't it? Then, unfortunately, when somebody asks you, oh, have you seen this film? If you will then probably say, no, but I've heard it's shit. And I think that's just maybe an unfortunate part of society, but certainly gaming nowadays is, if word of mouth is pretty important, but I think also just, I think there's more of an interesting story if a mediocre game is branded as utter shit, when actually people should be just saying, yeah, it's alright, it's not bad. And I think the reality of this game is it's not a crap game by any means. It's actually quite enjoyable. I'm enjoying it. But it's not a brilliant game. It's not a genre-defining game like Mass Effect or Half-Life or something like that. But as a piece of entertainment, I certainly feel it's earned its money. It's entertained me. I paid money for the game, and I feel pretty entertained by it. Anyway, let's not talk about that, because that's just getting into a realm of, oh my god, let's avoid that. I think, people love to sensationalise, and I just think some stuff is never as bad as people make out. I kind of like this Soul map as well. I mean, I think, one of the worst things you can have in a game is, oh, now you have to escort someone, or, oh, now you have to do this, or, go and do that, and then go and do this. And the game is very light on that, thank God, because the worst thing you could get in a game like this is, oh, Bella needs a dress. Go and find a dress from the habit block. And it's just like, do I really have to do that? Is that really essential? And I think the game really doesn't fuck about with stuff like that. Excuse my language. Because I think, and it shouldn't, a game should just be, right, here's a story, here's some events, go enjoy. And I do like that the game, it's a rail shooter, don't get me wrong. There's no exploring going on here, but that's not this. The game wouldn't work if it was a rail, if it was an open world sandbox. That's actually stupid. And I think certainly the enjoyment of a game like this is not having freedom to go and open a drop ship and go and fly around the Suloco. It's not about that. It's about, here is a story based upon a very predefined story. Sit back, enjoy, shoot your way through it, and get something from it. And I think a lot of people have a real negativity about that now, because a lot of games, obviously, people want to be able to make their own story and make their own freedoms, but that relies on the gamers being, firstly, able to do that, and secondly, not being utter complete morons, because a lot of people would just buy the game, they'll load it up, and for example, let's say EVE Online, great example, played that for many years. They'll load up EVE, the first thing they'll try and do is, right, what do? I undock. Oh, just got killed. Oh, right, oh god, this is shit. And they'll uninstall and take the game back. And so sandboxes, you have to have a bit of, you have to almost have some form of bond with the content, otherwise you're just going to say, what a load of shit, and walk away. And I think with things like Aliens, you kind of want to be led through a story, at least I did, and certainly when I heard this game was coming, my immediate response was, well, it's going to be some form of story-driven, shooter like Call of Duty or something. And to be honest, this is what it is, and I think that's for no bad thing, because you actually need the system to drive you through a bit of content. Otherwise, what on earth would you have? You'd have a group of Colonial Marines versus a group of aliens, and a bit of open space and a bit of scenery, go shoot, and that's just a deathmatch as far as I can see it. And I think, certainly when you've got a story as good as Aliens, it's probably not a bad thing. I think in terms of also, I love the fact that when you get maps that try and do this, they try and piss about with the gravity, and the ship's yawing rather, and it's it's kind of shifting and such. I just love that, and I think there's a real skill behind that. I think level designers are pretty clever people as it is, but I love the fact that it actually made it a part of the game, that the ship was listing. It was actually really having trouble, and I think again, just some of the action here is very kind of it doesn't feel very lethal at all, but the story I think is now pushing through, and I would say that you're almost forgiving. Well, I was forgiving of the issues behind the game, because I was actually being escorted on a lovely journey through a great story, and certainly some of the twists that are coming up, I think were very well written. And again, I would just stress, I think this is a great example of the first few levels being awfully done, being very poorly set up to try and get the player in quickly and to the content, when maybe they should have had a bit more build up. And I think they're maybe suffering from a couple of bad decisions, possibly on the story side, that they should have just immediately that they went immediately into the alien menace, and they should have maybe stuck with build-up. I mean, Aliens, the film, is actually about 20, maybe it's about 40 minutes of build-up before even anything happens. So they probably should have done something like that. So there we go. We escaped. The Suloco is basically falling apart, and we managed to get onto the dropship, and we're sucked out, literally, into space, which is pretty cool. And you can see the remains of the Sophra, pretty broken, destroyed ship. But I don't think they actually say too much more about Suloco. I think it may appear towards the end of the game, but certainly at this point it was, it was kind of all going a bit wrong. But as you can see, the action is now moving back towards LV-426, and that's where we'll certainly follow in the next level, as this rather broken dropship with a lost engine is hurtling very quickly towards the ground. Now you can see there, that's the remains of the air compressing unit, which is pretty cool, or one of them at least. And there we go, crash. Hope you enjoyed that. Stay tuned for more.